Starting on January 7th of this year, several wildfires broke out in the California area. The fire was quickly spread thanks to high winds and dry conditions, killing 28 people so far and injuring many more. Many of these deaths and injuries were workers working hard to fight the rapidly spreading inferno. Among them, many criminals from local prisons, being forced to work, earning as little as $5 a day. This practice is fully legal in the United States due to a loophole in the 13th Amendment. Once inmates are incarcerated, they give up their employment rights, such as minimum wage. But is this practice ethical? Should any human, regardless of their crimes, be forced to do work for almost no money? In most circumstances, forced prison labor is a major violation of human rights, but that doesn't seem to be the case here. Currently, there are several raging fires in the areas surrounding Los Angeles, California. To help fight the Eaton and Palisades Fire, over 1,000 incarcerated firefighters were deployed to help fight the fire. Because of their criminal status, they were paid between $5.80 to $10.24 a day. Despite these poor conditions, the former firefighters were happy to help. The cops treat us like but here we get better treatment, right? Says one of the firefighters in an interview. They talk to us like humans. We got a job, we're underpaid, but we got a job. As the fires progressed, prisoner workers were made to chop down trees, carry sandbags, and hike up hills with upwards of 65 pounds of gear. Sal Amanza, a 42-year-old incarcerated worker, described the work as difficult and backbreaking. You're putting your bodies through something that they can't get through without pushing them to the limit. These men and women were being taken advantage of by the system, yet are still happy to make a difference. However, because of their shaky legal status as criminals, they're getting paid almost nothing for risking their lives. But what is it that allows these employers to pay these guys so little? A large part of the American economy is labor provided by incarcerated individuals for a reduced rate. This labor is very manufacturer efficient due to the lower cost. Incarcerated workers generate billions of dollars worth of goods and services annually, but are paid pennies per hour without proper training or opportunity to build skills for careers after release. Imprisoned Americans are treated as cheap labor, then cast aside once they are released. The cheap labor has no growth opportunities. They're just being used because of their limited rights. While this could be considered slave labor, there's a loophole in the law pertaining to criminals. While the 13th Amendment ended slavery in the United States, a loophole allows people convicted of crimes to be forced to work for public or private enterprises. In this case, those tasked with firefighting volunteer for these positions and must meet a certain criteria. They are not assigned without their consent. In fact, this is not the first time that CAL FIRE has utilized prisoners to help fight fires. California began training inmates to help fight wildfires during World War II, when many men were deployed overseas. Today, the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, the State Forestry Department, and the Los Angeles County Fire Department operate 35 fire camps, where inmates can become certified wildland firefighters. Many California prisoners, like Alamanza, are being kept in these fire camps, being trained specifically for this sort of event. These recent events have exposed many inhumane practices as well. Most of their lunches consist of a simple sandwich, 2 pieces of white bread with a few slices of bologna, plus an apple. Their daily food budget of approximately $4 a day is hardly enough to sustain them for their high volume of manual labor. The article also says that incarcerated firefighters have some of the highest injury rates among all prison workers, and are 4 times more likely to sustain injuries compared to other firefighters. Also, they work some of the longest hours and have some of the hardest tasks to execute. They don't shoot water hoses, they are using powered chainsaws and manual hand tools, such as axes, with the goal of starving the fire of fuel to continue to burn. In other words, the hardest labor goes to the workers without rights or proper pay. While this strategy certainly saves a lot of money, is it really ethical? The Global Human Rights Clinic says no. They believe that this practice is an exploitation of the prisoners and a violation of their basic human rights. In any other workplace, these conditions would be shocking and plainly unlawful. The many incarcerated workers we interviewed told us story after story of inadequate equipment and training, punishments doled out if workers refused to labor, and an overall helplessness to a government institution functioning as both jailer and boss, says clinical professor Claudia Flores, the director of the Global Human Rights Clinic. Not only are these workers being paid less than free citizens, it seems they are also being deprived of the choice to work in some cases. It's easy to feel bad for these incarcerated workers, being paid very little, given very little to eat, and given no real choice. But surely they understood such rights could be taken away when they committed their crimes. Committing a crime in any country comes with the understanding of attached consequences. At the end of the day, those who commit a crime should be punished appropriately. That is the law, and it's the right thing to do. But right isn't ethical. And perhaps the law isn't ethical in this case. When you commit a crime, it comes with the understanding that you could face jail time or a fine. It usually does not come with the expectation of what is essentially slave labor. The law says prisoners are not subject to employment laws, such as minimum wage. But perhaps it isn't ethical to say that. It certainly isn't ethical that employers use the law to take advantage of these incarcerated individuals. Another interesting perspective is the severity of their crimes. Each individual has a different record. Does a shoplifter deserve the same unfair treatment as a murderer? HumanRights.org says that pay was determined depending on the skill level of the task assigned, not by the severity of the crime. Some crimes are unforgivable, and some are not. Do they deserve the same treatment? Many people, like California Assembly member Isaac Bryan, have begun to stand up for the incarcerated workers. Bryan thinks that the treatment of these incarcerated workers is unjust. He introduced a bill that would require pay for inmates to be the same as the lowest paid non-incarcerated firefighters on the front lines. I think it's appropriate for us to have a conversation about what equity looks like even in the midst of a natural disaster. He describes the importance of maintaining basic human rights for prisoners, many of whom didn't choose to be sent to fire camp. The utilization of prison labor, while completely legal, is a violation to basic human rights and could easily be considered unethical. This practice is often paired with unfair wages or mandatory participation, both of which add to the ethical dilemma. Laws like the 13th Amendment ended slavery, but left in a clause for incarcerated individuals. This allows American companies to take advantage of them. Perhaps federal or even local laws could be introduced to give prisoners some basic rights and protect them in those cases.